Detective Sarah Reeves parked her car along the curb in front of the Millfield Sheriff's Department and gazed up at the nondescript brick building. Mud splotched the wheel wells and undercarriage from the long drive out of the city on winding rural highways. A place like Millfield wasn't really her style. Much too quiet, far too sleepy. She preferred the clamor and chaos of urban life. When the request had come down from her captain to aid the local authorities with a bizarre murder, Sarah had jumped at the opportunity. One of the brighter, more talented young detectives on the force, Sarah had a keenly analytical mind and a dogged determination to untangle even the most intractable of cases. Well, if Millfield was in over its head with this one, she'd lend a hand. Sarah stepped out of the car, unknowingly checking her sidearm to ensure it was fitting snugly underneath the charcoal blazer. She straightened her collar and flicked a few unruly strands of dark hair back into place after the ride. Time to get to work. A minute later, Sarah was shaking hands with Sheriff Briggs in his cluttered office. He had a strong handshake for a man of his years, his palm rough with calluses. "Thanks for coming all the way out here, Detective," Briggs had said as they took their seats. "I'll be frank, we're at a bit of a loss with this one. I'm at your service, Sheriff. What can you tell me about the victim?" Briggs slid a thin folder across the desk to her. "Name's Daniel Cobb, age 26. Worked at the local grocery store bagging groceries and stocking shelves. Kept to himself mostly. Bit of an odd duck from what we've gathered." She flipped the file open, studying the driver's license photo clipped inside. Daniel Cobb. He stared back at her, pale and unremarkable. Wisps of hair, eyes watery, a fragile curl of a mouth. He hardly looked like the type to end up ritualistically butchered in the woods. "What was the cause of death?" she asked. "Blood loss from the lacerations," Briggs said, his mouth setting into a grim line. "The wounds themselves, never seen anything like them. Weird geometric patterns were carved all over the poor bastard. Forensics is still trying to make sense of it." Sarah frowned, feeling a cold trickle of disquiet run down her spine. Ritual killings were always disconcerting and inherently dark in obsessions and beliefs. Bringing the perpetrators of such crimes to justice was never easy. She closed the file. "Do you mind if I take a look at the scene? I'd like to get a feel for it myself." To have the reins taken from his grasp. He opened a drawer, fumbling for the keys to an official vehicle. "I'll give you directions. We haven't touched the scene beyond documenting it. Didn't want to disturb any evidence." She drove another 15 minutes later, a muddy trail through the thick woods where Daniel Cobb had met his grisly end. Getting out of the car, she zipped up her coat against the bite of the autumn chill. With fallen leaves, riots of reds and golds, crunching under her boots, she ducked beneath the police tape marking off the small clearing. The center of the clearing was a churned mess of mud and leaves, with a couple of evidence markers scattered around. And there, starkly pale amidst the litter, was the chalky silhouette that had been Daniel Cobb's body. Sarah circled it slowly, trying to picture the scene. He had been sprawled on his back, limbs akimbo in a grotesque parody of ancient sacrificial rites. The slashes on his body seemed to form no pattern that she could discern. Just random slashes and gouges. Sarah bent over and brushed off some damp leaves to uncover the dark marks that had lain beneath them on the mast. The arterial spray of blood had marked his final moments, an abstract painting of suffering. Icy fist clenched in Sarah's gut. She swallowed. Murders were never easy to watch, but for some reason this one bothered her more than most. She rose, tucking her hands into her pockets, and tried to imagine the scenario. Cobb was dragged here, already debilitated from captivity and torture. He'd been dragged into the center of the clearing, and then they'd cut him up like a Christmas ham and left him to bleed out into the uncaring earth. Why? What good could it possibly achieve to do such a brutal and bloody thing? Was it some twisted ritual demanded of a fragment of their broken psyche? To these questions, Sarah had yet no answers, only a sense that yawned within her, that the case would be taking some very dark roads before the truth would out. She shook her head and walked back to the car. She needed to dig more into the life of Daniel Cobb, so that she could find answers there as to who might have wanted him dead in such a vicious fashion. Maybe he had hidden depths not obvious from his unremarkable exterior. The clings and clatters of the passenger cars had long since faded as she drove back into town. The trees slowly thinned, turning into strips of long lawns and well-worn walking paths, before giving out finally to the steep-roofed houses and squat brick storefronts. Sarah's mind circled endlessly back to those strange hours, the rictus of horror frozen on Cobb's lifeless face. What could he have possibly seen in his final moments to provoke such terror? What dark secrets had the shy grocery clerk stumbled upon? That coolness running up her spine had little to do with the crisp autumn air. One way or another, Sarah would find out the truth. She wouldn't rest until Daniel Cobb's killer was behind bars, no matter how deep the shadows grew or what horrors lurked inside them. But in her heart of hearts, she knew the truth was something at a dreadful price. Millfield harbored dread mysteries hidden behind its sleepy facade.